Hello, Muscle Man. How's it going? So, I'm here to analyze your brick film like you asked me to. Now, let's watch it first, and then we will talk about it. Nice kick. All right. So, a few things to say. It's not a very long brick film, but that's fine. You know, animation is important, no matter how long or short it may be. So, first up, this running animation, I gotta say, I like it a lot. I think it's pretty good. So one thing that you do here pretty well is you make sure that the characters have these very strong, elasticated poses, right? Now, one thing they tell you in animation courses, or animation in general, is that if you have a character in animation, you want to make sure that every one of their poses is very strong and strong enough to read if the character is entirely blacked out. For example, if this character was a silhouette, like in this game, for example, look at this. So these characters are entirely silhouetted, right? But despite that, despite not being able to actually see the details in their characterization, you can still tell exactly what's going on. You can see this frog, he gets deflated. You can see this frog, he's bloating up. You can see their arms outstretched. And it's very important that, you know, as animators, we realize that that the audience can recognize what our characters are doing through these very strong poses. You can see how exaggerated they are. We can see he's banging on the ground here, and we can tell that just by how, you know, just by how much weight they put into it, how high he outstretches his arms here, and how quickly he slams them back on the ground. Now, you do a good job here because, like I said earlier, you know, his arms are outstretched, his legs are outstretched. You can tell that he's running. Very nice. But with the camera movement, though, one thing that you want to make sure is that if you have your camera moving, you want to make sure that it sort of stays moving at all times. You see it kind of stops here for a bit, and then it stops again. It kind of hiccups. And even if it stops for like one single frame, it will kind of be noticeable. It will be a hiccup. So you just got to make sure that's always moving at all times. A good trick I find is to make sure that if the camera is moving, your character here is in the center of the frame, right? So in the next frame, what I would normally do is I would have the camera essentially have the character in the same spot in terms of where it is in the frame, you know, in the video itself. The character can be moving forward within the context of the entire set, but within the camera should be following him along in a way that sort of makes it so that way it's like it's kind of hard to explain, but like it's following him in a way that the character himself looks like he's in a similar position and the background is moving around him. So for example, the way I do it here, in this particular shot where Spider-Man is falling from the sky, is I have him falling from the sky, right? But even though I have him moving along the set, in the camera itself, in the video itself, he stays in relatively the same position. You know, he stays around this particular area, and he's kind of just spinning down. And I have the camera, the camera is the one that's moving a lot. Okay, you can have your camera move very drastically, but as long as the character is in the relative same position, as well as like a set piece like here, for example, the building is also going to stay in the same position relative to the camera's placement, then it will look like the camera's just following it at a constant steady pace. And you want to kind of keep that with your with your animations too. You want to make sure that the character's not moving. So you do it actually, so here actually towards the end of this shot, you actually do see a bit of that. At the start of it though, the character moves from left of the frame to right of the frame. But here is probably when the camera action is at its best, right around this area. Another thing though is that I can't tell if you have autofocus on or off, because here the character is in focus and then here the background is in focus. So you want to make sure that autofocus is turned off, because here he's back in focus again. And autofocus, it's just it can mess you up pretty easily, especially when you're doing animation, because the camera thinks, oh, you want it to do like this, when in reality you don't want the camera to be doing anything. You want to make sure you're in complete control of the camera's controls. Anyways, next up, now these rotating pivot types of fight scenes I always find kind of interesting, because I think everybody who does Lego animations do them, right? Now the trick to doing a fight scene like this though is you want to have their bodies, like the hinges that their body connects to the legs on, you want to have them rotating up and down frequently. So for example, in this video, with the sword fight, the way I really have these strong poses kind of laid out is I make the characters bend back a lot. Like look how much he's bending back here. So that way we got this swinging pose. He's ready to swing. In the next frame he swings and boom, clash. You know, we have them kind of lean into the swinging very slightly, and then all of a sudden just we let it rip. You know, just boom, just as quickly as possible. And that is so powerful and impactful that it causes the characters to bounce back a lot. I have them, you know, like, so like it's a lot of rotating, and it's a lot of bending the characters back, and even doing stuff like this. You don't want, you know, like, look at her legs. The chef's legs, for example, is here. I have her legs completely moved so that way I can get her into a better position. So one thing you kind of want to avoid doing is you don't want the characters to always be standing in the exact same spot when they're fighting, because, you know, when you're just kind of rotating their bodies, it doesn't make for very impactful punches. So here I kind of have them switching steps a lot, right? I have them switching legs, I have them shifting their weight around, and I have them moving around this one essential vicinity. You know, they're not necessarily like walking around everywhere, and they're kind of staying around the same spot, but they're not on the exact same stud all the time. So you can really get the impact and the weight of their swings because of that. And I also make sure, you know, also just one thing I try to make sure is that when it comes to fight scenes, it's all about setting up a character's hit, you know. So in this frame, I make her pull back a lot, and then I make her release. And when you're doing these pullback frames, you want to give the audience a solid amount of time to sort of really take in the poses, like I said earlier. So now when the actual punches hit each other, you don't have to spend too much time on that. In fact, the less time you actually spend, the less amount of frames you actually spend on characters having contact with each other, the more impact and bounce you can kind of give the characters' punches. So when they're doing stuff like this, you can kind of get the sense that they're kind of grabbing onto each other, you know, like he's holding onto him, like he doesn't want to get hit, and that can work in a fight too. I'm not entirely exactly sure which half you're going for. I'm not sure if you're going for more impactful punches or more of like a grappling style match, right? Because there's many different ways to have a fight scene, both in LEGO Animation and just in general, right? That's why there's like a billion different fighting styles in the world. But I think if we move on to this section, I like that these punches whiff. But if you're gonna have a punch, so this punch whiffs, right? And he quickly transitions. Now I think maybe the camera moves a little bit too fast here, so the camera moves a little bit too fast and a little bit too jarring, which makes it it doesn't make it difficult for the audience to read, but it can sort of remove the weight that the punch might have. So I like this a lot. I like what you're doing here with the movement, and you're having him bend back, and then you're having him shift onto the next arm, and he swings into it. But I think maybe just the swing itself, you have a little bit too many frames, so it can kind of, again, remove the weight and impact that a punch has. When he does this whiff here too, something I recommend doing is having the character bend forward, right? Because remember, when you're punching somebody, you put your entire body weight into it. You know, you're both lunging forward and you're rotating your body towards the character. You're rotating the body towards the target. But without the lunge forward, you kind of don't get that sense of a lot of weight shifting. And that's the thing about fight scenes, right? That's kind of what makes them a little bit tricky, is that you need to be moving essentially every part of their body, because they're putting so much force into these hits, into these impacts, that it should affect their entire body significantly. So like if I can't, so let's see. I'm gonna go to this video real quick again, because we have this one character here who misses a punch around here. So as you can see, right, this character, the guy with the axe, he puts his entire body into this axe swing. Now I know it's not a punch, but we're getting to a punch in a second. But because he puts his entire body into an axe swing, when he misses it, that causes a lot of lag, I guess, you know, would be a good term. He's stuck here for so long because of how much power he put into that weight, into that punch, into that hit. And then, you know, I have the strong pose here. I have Spider-Man once again leaning into the punch. And once he does that sort of charge up phase, this initial charge up, we let the audience read that, and then he lets it rip really quickly. Again, putting his entire body into it. I make him take a step forward even, you know, he's not staying in one space. So that way you get that whole lunge. And then after the punch lands, you know, you need to have a bit of that time for the body to rest, to really soak up that kinetic energy. To really make it seem like it had a lot of impact and a lot of, you know, weight on him. Anyways, but here in this sense though, right, you have the guy whiffing the punish, you have the guy whiffing the target, he misses the guy, and he instantly goes into the next punch, which is also a viable thing to do. That's pretty good. I think the thing is though, when he stops at a dime here, it can be, You know, I think you're doing this because you want to let the audience know that he just, you know, he missed another punch, which is good. But there's ways to do this without having him stop on the dime, like I said earlier. You know, you got to make him shift his entire body weight into it and have him be like, oh my god, I missed. You know, I'm confused, and now I'm leaning forward, and now I'm totally vulnerable and exposed. Anyways, this punch here, pretty solid. You know, I like the sound effect that you played here. It really adds a lot of weight to it. And then when he's on the ground here, so when you have somebody falling on the ground, well, you wanted, okay, actually, let me play that back again. So I like what you do here. When you have somebody falling on the ground, you have them kind of like shift their weight around a bit, you know, because their body just hit the ground. It's going to be a heavy force, a heavy impact. And then you have the camera pan here, which is nice too. This is a good camera pan too. It's very smooth. I like the zoom out you do. I don't know if this sort of like zoom out, zoom in is intentional, but if it is, it actually does add sort of that kind of chaotic kinetic energy that you'd get in a fight scene. You know, that kind of like, oh my god, everything's going by so fast, I'm in the middle of something dangerous. It's pretty solid. I wonder why he does this here. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not. Anyways, he lifts his arm up, and I like this kick a lot. This kick, one of the reasons why I like it so much is because this frame right here, it like, you sort of do that thing, right? It's a very fast movement, so you kind of lean into that. You don't spend too many frames on it. Of course, you do need to remember to make sure every character is always moving in every frame. One single stop, if you have any moment where a character is standing still or not moving for 2 frames in a row, it can really cause a hiccup in the animation itself. But his landing here is also pretty good. You have him sort of like, it moves like, again, the gaps in the movement are very fast or are very huge, but because it's such a fast movement, those gaps in the movement are very warranted, right? You need to make sure that a fast movement has a lot of gaps. And then he settles here pretty solidly. I think maybe he stops a bit too early though. You can have this shift up, so we can see his body is moving backwards here, right? And then it moves forward. But if it just stops there, that can kind of be like if you're going really fast in a car and then you suddenly just slam on the brakes and it just stops too quickly, right? It'd be a little bit weird. So what you need to do, what the heck? I've never had that happen to me before, dude. My bad. I just randomly got a Twitch follow in the middle of recording this because I used the same program to stream on Twitch to record these videos because OBS does everything. But I didn't know. My bad, dude. But yeah, so what you wanna have here is if he's gonna shift his weight forward, you want to keep that forward momentum kind of going a bit until he stops. Similar to when he's landing on the ground. I think you said you already saw Cobsby's analysis, but essentially whenever I have a character landing from any moment, even actually, you know what? I forgot. In this particular frame, Spider-Man does a flip too. He flips onto this guy. So when he flips forward very heavily, right? And then when he takes a step back, I gotta keep that momentum going. So essentially, with a fight scene, it's really just all about momentum and just figuring out, you know, how to shift weight around, and how to make sure you can really emphasize the amount of weight and power that each character is putting inside their punches. That is why that's why their leg work is also very important, you know, because legs and hands and body, essentially when you fight, you have to use your whole body, right? It can't just be your arms and you rotating on the pivot. The pivot that is, of course, the stud that they rotate their entire bodies around. Because it's just simply, you need to have it more exaggerative, essentially. Once again, it's how exaggeration is really how you get weight and power into the movements. You know, it's that charge up phase, and it's the quick release. There's a lot of rhythm to it. But you know, I still think this is a pretty solid video on its own right as well. I like this kick a lot, and I like that you're doing a lot of things with the camera movement. You know, it shows that you're experimenting, and there's improvements being made. But you know, I hope what you take what I said makes sense, and I hope it helps. Aside from that, there's not much else I can really say. Again, I think this walking animation is pretty solid. With walking can be a bit tricky, right? Because you gotta make sure like they're constantly moving forward, and and here the stud kind of shifts a bit. I think it could be very beneficial. It's definitely been beneficial for me. But having a stop motion program that can show you the last frame compared with the frame that you're currently taking is very convenient. That way you can kind of avoid little hiccups like this where he changes like the Z axis. I think this is you know, he's on this stud here, but then he steps onto the stud below it. You know, that's a very common, you know, that can just happen to anybody, right? Because a lot of programs, especially if you're shooting freehand, you can't really tell exactly where everything was the last frame, so set bumps and stuff can be a little bit more devastating. But I think Stop Motion Studio is a pretty good program for it. But I hope this has been helpful and informative, and let me know what you think. If there's any particular questions you have specifically, just let me know and I'll answer them. Thank you very much again for your donation, man. And this has been Muscle Man, the muscliest man who ever did, whoever lived. I'll see you around.